So there's this common Scanf or getchar mistake that a lot of beginners make when first starting to learn how to code in C. And even I myself have made this mistake in the past. And I think it's even possible for senior developers to make this mistake too. And I got an email recently about it asking this question. So he did the first project of my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And if you haven't downloaded it, it's just a guide that teaches you how to code in 30 days by building your first 4 programming projects. And I give you tutorials in each one, and it's a free guide. It's absolutely free. And I'll leave a link in the description if you want to download it. So the first project in my challenge is to build a tip calculator. And the developer of this program, his name is Syed. Alright, so first he asks the user if the user would like to tip or quit. So the user just has to input T to calculate the tip. And then after that, the user types in the bill in dollars or whatever currency, then the tip percentage, and then the number of people of how to divide the bill. So the tip comes out to be $50, and then the total bill is $550, and then the shared cost between the 5 people is $110. But the problem happens in line number 8 when the calculator restarts and it asks the user if they would like to calculate the tip or quit. For some reason, it just starts to enter the bill, and then he puts in Q, and then all this print starts to happen, and then it quits here. So he was wondering, so his question for me was, why is this happening? So I got Syed's code and I put it here in REPL-IT and just run it to see what happens. So I run it here, and then I just type in T like he did, and then I type in 500 what he did, and his tip was 10%, and then the number of people is 5. So, and then it does the same thing that his screenshot said, and he press Q, and then it does the same thing. So it's the same thing. So what are my first observations here? So the first observation here is that everything is okay the first time. The first time here, everything is okay. It's only when the second time comes around that there are issues. Like if we were to run this again, I'm sure that everything will work fine. The issue only happens the second time. Alright, so after observing that the issue only happened the second time, my next suspicion is that this getchar here, or the equivalent of this would just be Scanf, because I mentioned in the video that this is a common Scanf mistake, but the equivalent of getchar would be this code right here. So we can run it again and just prove to you that this code is equivalent. So we do the thing that Syed did. Okay, so it's the same output, same results. So this is basically what he did. He just read in one character. So my suspicion is that the getchar or the scanf is probably reading in the end of line character. When the user hits 5 here and presses enter, then there's a remaining character here that's not read. It's an end of line character. And my suspicion is that when the program starts over at the top again, it will probably read in that as the first character here. So let's revert the code back to Syed's code. Syed has a debug code here, printf, to look at what the choice was. And I think this is really good. This is really good coding, debugging, because what he's doing here is he's looking at the character value here, and then he wants to look at the actual hex value here. So this is really good on him for being able to know how to print that. So let's run that. Let's clear the console and let's run it again. So we'll do the same inputs, T, and then there you go, you see T and 74. So this is the actual character value, and then this is the hex value. And then we type in the bill, which was 500, 10, and then 5, and then Q. And you can see that there's an A here for some reason, and here there's a T, and then there's a 74. Now this 74 is the hex version of T. If you look at ASCII tables, and if you don't know what ASCII is, it stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. Basically, this is just how the computer stores text. ASCII codes represent text in computers. And if you look at the table all the way at the bottom, so this is just a table for the binary, and then the octal, the decimal, and then the hexadecimal. And if you scroll all the way down to the T in the computer, for the letter T, the computer will store a 74 value. And so that's where that 74 comes from. And it seems that there's just a space and then an A. So that's already a hint that it's probably an end of line character. Probably the end of line character is here, but you can't see it because it's a white space. So there's an end of line character, and then there's the A. So when you when you see the A, this is the hexadecimal representation, you can go to the ASCII table and then you can look, what does the computer say A is? So if you find the A, then you find out it's an end-of-line character. So this is the end-of-line character. So now we've figured out what the problem is. The problem is that it's reading in an end-of-line character. And that comes back to my first observation is, where did that end-of-line character come from? It probably came from here when the user hit enter here. So there's the user's inputting an end-of-line character here with his keyboard, or her keyboard. So after realizing that it's an end-of-line character, and Syed actually knew this himself when he sent this code to me, when you figure that out, you have to ask yourself, why is it an end-of-line character? And think about the user input. And it's hard, it's a common mistake for beginners because they don't realize that the user is actually inputting end-of-line characters here. Like here, there's an end-of-line character, and then here and here. So the next question is there a way that we can skip the new line character from the first time? There is a simple and easy way to skip the end-of-line character from the first time, and that's by doing this code. So you have the %C, but you add a space here. And if you have a space here, you're telling Scanf that you don't want to read the white spaces. You want to read the next character after all the white spaces. So basically it just skips over the white characters, or the white space, and it reads the next character and stores it in choice. So now if we do this, you do T, and then we enter the bill, which was 500, 10%, and then 5 people, and then there you go. And then we do Q, which is what he wanted, and then it says thank you, bye. So you can see we're reading in Q and the hex number is 71, and we can go to the ASCII table again, and then we can verify that Q is indeed 71 right here. And then now that that's working, we can just remove the printf because we're done debugging and we have a fix, and then we can just rerun this. And then there you go, now it looks a lot cleaner. So this is the key here, scanf and then quotes, and then you put a space here. That space is really important, and this is the mistake that a lot of beginners make, because when you scanf other types of variables like this double here, so you don't put a space in the %D, the %LF, only in the %C, and that's because you're telling the Scanf that you don't want to read white spaces, and Scanf only cares about white spaces when it comes to characters and strings. When it comes to the Scanf here, you can just the Scanf will know already to not look at the white space because it's looking for a number. And so yeah, I see a lot of people comment this on YouTube, like, why do you put a space here before the %C? And that's the reason why, because we want to skip over any white spaces. We want to just pick up the pure character or the pure string. Just to test this idea further, we can actually do a little test here. So I'm gonna do a return 0, so the code is not going to execute this part, it's only going to care about up here. And this is just to prove to myself. Oh, this is cool. So the IDE is imagining what you're going to type. It's kind of trying to predict what you're going to type. And that's because there's an AI function here in REPL-IT. So that's how we can start using AI in our code. So you just press tab to get everything there. And we don't want this part. So we just run this. All right, so now I'm going to put as much white space as I want. I'm going to put spaces. I'm going to put tabs. And then I'm going to put in the bill, which is 500, right? There you go, the bill is 500. Alright, so that's the fix for his bug. What are some takeaways that we can get from this debugging task? So the first thing you want to do when you're debugging is you want to observe what's going on. You want to observe the issue, you want to state out what's actually happening, something that you observe that's interesting about the issue that's going on. And like in this one, I was observing that it only happens the second time. The first time it's okay, the second time it doesn't. So what's different between the two? And then the second thing you want to do when you're debugging is you want to do some sort of logging. You want to look at the logs, or you want to do some printing to figure out what is the value that's actually being stored in that variable. Usually when there's a bug happening in code, it's because there's a value that was stored in a variable that it shouldn't have been stored. So printf or logging, just to get some visibility on what's happening. Maybe you're using a debugger, then you put the variable in the watch window, see what the variable is and see what the value is in that variable, and that will give you some clues as to what's going on. So the second takeaway I want you to get is just a use case or some proof as to why I like C. Maybe you're confused, like why would you like C if you have to worry about this kind of thing? And that's exactly why I like C. It's because C forces you to worry about these kinds of things. In C, you have to worry about ASCII values, you have to look at the hex value, and that's what I really like about C, because you're starting to look at what is the actual data that the computer is looking at. So you're really forced to think about how the computer thinks about this. In this program, you really have to pay attention to the data types. If you don't pay attention closely to the data types, you can mess up a lot of your code. In Python, you have the ability to change a data type of a variable on the fly during runtime. And I think that's potentially dangerous. And if you get into the habit of doing that with your variables, then that can lead to bad coding practices in the future. If you learn C first and you're trained how to care about the data types of your variables, then when you move on to Python, then you'll carry that habit forward. Another thing I liked about this program is that it taught you to have an understanding of the user input feed or the user input buffer. You have to care about all the numbers, but not only just the numbers, but even the small details like the end-of-line character. Python will handle the end-of-line characters for you, and you don't have to worry about the end-of-line characters, but in C, those are some things that you have to worry about. And what I really like about C is that once you've coded that in C and you've handled those kinds of cases, when you learn to code in Python or other higher level languages where you don't have to worry about that, then you start to really appreciate those higher level languages. So learning C first gives you an appreciation for the other higher level languages. And ultimately, like I always say, learning C is really helpful because it really helps you understand how the computer works. Alright, the last takeaway from this tutorial is how to use Scanf properly, or how to use getchar properly, or how to not use getchar, if you know what I'm saying. Alright, that's it for this week's video. I hope it really helped you out. Maybe you're running into this issue, or maybe you're going through my 30-day beginner coding challenge. I hope it really helps you out, that you don't make the same mistake that Syed made, and now you know how to use Scanf, so I hope you can avoid this mistake. Alright, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and then go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. Alright, thanks for watching this video. I hope it really helped you out, and if it really helped you out, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments section if you really liked it. If you want me to make more content like this, let me know in the comments section, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section, and I'll be sure to answer you there, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.